Good afternoon, everyone. My name is J.W. Matt Hennessy. I'm the senior servant of Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church. This very sanctuary and this very sacred space is a space that we're using today to call out some very important issues relative to our community. For a moment, I would like to at least help you understand that you are in a space where the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke from this very podium behind me in November of 1961, the very first and only place that he spoke in all of Oregon. And for 48 years, we were blessed to be led by Pastor O.B. Williams, who led this church for those 48 years, and then I've been here for 16 and a half years. Our church has been known as a place that people can come, everyone can come, and a place that's willing to speak out about very important community issues. Today certainly is one of them. Now, I recognize that many of you are aware that while gun violence and murders have been on the rise in our community, and many of you are aware that we too as a family, while we have served and supported many families who are left behind, we are in that same place right now. And as a result of that, I am grateful for the number of efforts that are being made to really, again, raise the profile of the fact that murder is wrong and on the rise here and on the rise in many large cities around our nation. Today, you're going to hear from speakers from very different perspectives. So my perspective is one, another speaker's may be another, but at the same time, we're all on the same page in knowing that it is time out for this kind of activity to continue. It's time out for people being silent about it and assuming that if it doesn't seem to bother me and it doesn't touch my family, then I don't have to worry about anything. The reality is this touches all of us. I've lived here for 32 years. I've always seen Portland as a safe city. Many of us have. This is not the Portland that we know. Even when we've had rises in violence, of which we have had over the years, we have somehow come together as community, and we have worked to make sure that we have a far better narrative. And so I would ask you today that as you listen, that you hear the heart of each one of these speakers, hear the passion behind what they have to say, and recognize that there's nothing monolithic about our community, the black and brown community, as it is for any other community. And very important that we honor the perspective that everyone has. There are some very, very important things that need to be done and said. Personally, I have dedicated this week to focus on Jalan and his death and his murder, and the fact that in 2 weeks there'll be more that I'll have to say, but that's as much as I have to say today. So I would ask right now, if you will, we're going to turn the mic over to Miss Antoinette Edwards, who is one of our community elders. We're grateful that she has the ability to be here with us today. Again, she is not new to this issue. She has worked with families for years when it comes to the issue of murder and of violence in general. Then we'll have Royal Harris. And when Mr. Harris comes up, one of the things that I heard him say when he entered the church today is that he didn't need me or any of us to legitimize who he is and his march that is planned for Saturday. We respect that, and we honor that, and we recognize that he does not need that from us. But we want to let him know that as he amplifies his voice, that whether we are needed or not, our voice is there as well. And we are grateful that he's able to be here in a place that he actually grew up. And right downstairs, we are celebrating his grandmother, who just celebrated her 100th birthday on yesterday.
And the people's mad as hell when we coming in. They out there arguing with the people and everything about that.
Gotcha. Okay. So I just want you to know that's what's going on. After Mr. Harris, you'll hear the mayor, Mayor Ted Wheeler. You'll hear our police chief, Chuck Lavelle. Then is our deputy DA able? There she is. Our chief deputy DA, Kirsten Snowden, will speak. And then our U.S. attorney, Scott, will be here. Scott, you know I always mess up your name, Scott. Asfog? I'll get it when I get it. Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, sis, do me a favor. No. No. Gotcha. Understood. Understood. Understood, sis. I respect that. Can you do us a favor? Let us just get through this right now, and we're going to be here for you afterwards. Sweetie, you don't have to tell me. Okay? I don't need to be told that. I understand that, and I've been in this for a long time. Okay? Antoinette, if you will. Yeah, I know. I've been that for a long time too. Amen.
Leave me the fuck alone. You're a fucking hypocrite.
You are in a sanctuary.
This ain't no God's house with your cripples.
You're in a sanctuary.
You are
Okay?
sick. Stand up to entertain these white people and black people dying. You stupid bitch.
Thank you.
You welcome. Fred, you stupid ass nigga.
Thanks a lot.
That's what you is, a house nigga.
Thank you.
You welcome.
Appreciate it. Come on, Antoinette. And just for the record, I've been called worse. And so I'd ask in succession if you will come up. Antoinette now, Royal will come next, then the mayor, and then the chief, and then the chief DA, and then the U.S. attorney, and then I'll come back.
Just come today to you with a heavy heart, the weight of all that we're carrying, the murders. This is a plea from where you stand, from where you sit, to embrace the need for us to come together as a community. And Ubuntu is an African philosophy. We need each other now in every way that we can do what we can. And I'm going to ask my dear brother, Royal, to come and stand with me.
I got my shots.
Because this is symbolic as an elder to pass this on to the young ones. I see Brother Marcus Branch. Much love for you, brother. We need each other. And I'm so proud of what he's going to do Saturday, and he'll talk about it from his voice, to stop the murder. There's a better way. And he's worked so hard, and I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
With
I
much
appreciate
love, I
you.
pass it on.
Cuddy. Come here, Cuddy. So you got on the right color shorts. Now we make a team, player. Oh, you got to take your mask off. You got to show them your face. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Royal Harris. I am here as somebody who's been a member of this church since I was 8 months old, who grew up here, who was raised by O.B. Williams. My mom was a church secretary for years, and I'm happy to be here in this place that I've always called home. I'm happy to have my cousin Marcus here, who's experienced the same life as me from a different perspective, but because we had the same grandfather, same grandmother, this is ours. So as I talk about what I'm doing, which is a march against murder, what I'm saying is that we are protesting, we are saying we are against the construct that the premeditated act of taking a life to resolve conflict is not legitimate. Whether it's domestic violence, whether it's gun violence, whatever it is, whether it's anything, the taking of life, the premeditated taking of life is unnecessary. And we've reached an epidemic proportion that is beyond what this city deals with. This is my first cousin. We've been through this with family members, with friends, from the north side of Portland to northeast to the numbers. How old are you now, 50?
48.
Oh, you're still a kid. I'm 52. So, We're talking about a collective 100 years of life experience with probably over just as many lives lost. And as black men, what I'm committed to do as a black man is to elevate the voices of black men, black leaders, black women, to say it's time for us to make a decision that we are the creators of the solution for this situation. You know, what hood you from, homie?
From Portland.
You from Portland? And again, that's it. We're from Portland, different places all over town, but we're here to represent everybody. So what I want to say, there's an important thing I want to say, and I have to say this, because the March Against Murder is for every citizen in Portland, not just black. The reason we are focusing on black men, we are disproportionately dying, and as you can see, we're black. But there are white people dying too, and the reason is because conflict has got to the point where death is a legitimate problem solver. And we have to attack and address that. And as black men in my generation who come from this culture, who've seen friends die, who've seen friends kill, and lost friends for decades, it's unacceptable. Where we have young men killing children now, killing females with no remorse or regard, we have to step in. And as black men, and I'm gonna say this ad nauseum, as black men, it is our obligation to lead and protect our community. It's our obligation to bring our voice to the concerns of Portland. It's our voice that needs to be heard. Now, over the last couple of hours, I got a lot of calls about something simple. And I thank the mayor and the city for the support. But I've been getting these calls and concerns that our event is sponsored by the city. And I'm a word nerd. Sponsor means that you provide financial support for advertising. I don't need a sponsor. I don't want a sponsor. I need an investor. My community needs investors, people who will take time, finance, resource, give it to those black content experts, those of us who've been working in community-based organizations, who've been working with the city, who have experience contacting law enforcement, who have lived expertise to do the work that is the result of 32 years of this senseless kind of behavior. This senseless behavior has to stop, not because we don't value the young black men, but because we want them to value the people that they see no value in. So with that said, again, I don't need, and as Pastor Hennessy said, I didn't come here because I need anybody. I have a black community I reached out to first that has been responding in a valiant way beyond my even measure. I've talked with families, I've talked with community members, I've talked with men who this is a conversation we've never had as it relates to the conditions of our community. So again, to Pastor Hennessy's point, no, I don't need the city. But what I do need is that the whole city understand this is not a racial problem. This is not a young black man problem. This is a problem with an American culture that romanticizes and legitimizes violence as conflict resolution. At this point, as a black man, part of the community that is most affected by this code that we call violence, my community is taking a hit like gun violence is COVID. It's not a cold, we get COVID, except it comes in the form of lead. My goal is to change the attitudes because the behavior has to change. We have to start with young people. We have to start with kids. And so part of what we're looking at doing with this march and what we want to talk about and highlight is how do we get academic and institutions to invest in that. So we're looking at K-5 involvement. That means we're going to do restore that when we have these young people, we're going to teach them social and emotional intelligence. That as they move to middle school, that we teach them conflict resolution skills. As they engage high school, that we look up and we're teaching them how to mediate. Because the true point is, the highest number of gun victims and the gun perpetrators are between 20 and 34, which means this is an adult problem. And it's an adult problem because we're not doing the right stuff with our young people. So what I ask of all citizens of Portland, black, white, brown, whatever, if you have the opportunity, if you are against in all forms the just senseless murder of people, the taking of a human life for no legitimate reason, I ask you to join us at Peninsula Park, 1 o'clock Saturday. I ask you to commit yourself to that walk from Peninsula Park to Woodlawn Park, where we talk about solutions. And then in the afterward, I ask you, evaluate how you consume violence day to day. Evaluate how it's desensitizing you. If you're white, understand this violence you see that's promoted through the media as a black issue, y'all killing each other too. 89% of victims of violence receive that from people who look just like them. But right now, my biggest thing is join us this Saturday and commit to marching against the senseless, premeditated killing of humans. Come on, no.
No disrespect to the community leaders or no one that's been putting in their work for years, but I just say it's time to pass the torch. That's all I got to say.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And Royal and Teddy, thank you. Appreciate what you're doing. And Antoinette, thank you. I'd like to thank Pastor Hennessy for hosting this call to action to address the public health crisis of gun violence, an epidemic that's affecting each and every one of us. Pastor Hennessy is a long-term friend of mine. In the past, he's invited me here to help honor the lessons and the legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., in fact, at the podium behind me. I've also invited him on multiple occasions to join me in denouncing hate, racism, violence, and crimes against the community. He's been a driving force behind the Interfaith Peace and Action Collaborative, or IPAC. Leaders from IPAC have, for months, consistently demanded that the city, the county, federal agencies, the district attorney, and others take bold and urgent action to stop the senseless killing that's taking place on our streets. And now, here he is again, someone who just 8 days ago was personally subjected to the pain and the trauma felt by too many when he lost his own stepson to gun violence. It's a stark reminder that each time gun violence is committed, someone's loved one is hurt or won't ever return home. Someone will not be able to hug or hold their child, family member, or a friend. Whole families experience trauma, and indeed entire communities experience trauma. What we need right now are direct interventions with the individuals and families affected by gun violence. And those best positioned to do that work are those trusted community members and organizations that they represent. Law enforcement is doing its part too, but there's also an urgent need to develop feasible, scalable, and community-led interventions that mitigate gun violence and its associated health impacts. We're here today to center and to support that community voice. Saturday's March Against Murder is a powerful step in that direction. The march demonstrates that black men, and indeed the entire black community, are against premeditated taking of life. It's also being held to call out American culture as a whole for promoting violence as a legitimate form of conflict resolution. And it will introduce a comprehensive strategy developed by black men and women to address and solving conflicts with violence. Another vital piece of the solution puzzle is the City of Portland continuing its commitment to addressing gun violence, and we're doing that. We know the spike in gun violence is not endemic to Portland. It's happening all across the country, and in some cities, frankly, at a higher rate than Portland. But Portland's crisis is what matters to us, and Portland's crisis is our responsibility to solve. Already this year, we've seen 32 killings, 24 by gunfire. This same time last year, that number was only 4. Our goal is to de-escalate and lower the tensions in community that are feeding this contagious crisis. We've begun putting together the Police Bureau's focused intervention team and the community oversight group that it'll operate under. The intervention team is in the process of being created, and Chief Lavelle will talk more about that when he comes up to the podium. I can also tell you that the oversight group is quickly taking shape and will have its first meeting next week. I want to be clear. I see what others see. People being shot and killed in our community. I'm deeply impacted by the loss of life and the trauma that's currently plaguing our community. More action is needed, and we're working urgently with the community to deliver on that action. I'll now pass this over to Chief Lavelle with updates from the Portland Police Bureau. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to talk briefly about some of the activities the Portland Police Bureau is engaged in to respond to gun violence in the community. As the Mayor mentioned, we're moving forward with the development of our focused intervention team. That job announcement will be posted tomorrow and be open for approximately 10 days, at which time we'll engage the community oversight group for interviews and the next steps in the selection process. We're continuing to do extra patrols around areas where there are visuals and services and memorials. We've been working in close partnership with our partners on the federal side, the FBI. We'll be out this weekend again with them, responding to scenes of shootings and gun violence with the intention of gathering real-time intelligence and information, which will help us initiate cases quickly and hold shooters responsible. We're working closely with our Office of Violence Prevention and other community partners, and we're, as we always do, giving resources and referrals to folks who we feel might be at risk of gun violence or people who feel they need resources to keep themselves and their families safe. And I just want to let everyone know we're doing this work in response to requests from the community. We're doing it in collaboration with the community, and we're doing it in service to the community. Thank you. And I'll have Kirsten Snowden from the DA's office next.
Good afternoon. My name is Kirsten Snowden, and I'm a Chief Deputy District Attorney with the Multnomah County DA's office. I'm here this afternoon on behalf of DA Mike Schmidt, who sends his regrets that he was not able to personally appear. He did, however, want me to convey the fact that combating gun violence and the prosecution of those cases is his #1 priority. Not only is it his #1 priority, we have internally within our office reallocated resources, prosecutorial resources, to give particular focus on all types of shootings, assaults, and homicides. We have recruited over half a dozen additional experienced prosecutors from other areas in our office to focus on these crimes. And we're meeting weekly with our partners, as Chief Lavelle mentioned, both law enforcement, Portland Police Bureau, the FBI, Gresham Police, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, but also our federal partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we're talking about these cases collaboratively because unfortunately many of them are connected to one another. So we are working together to put together the pieces that perhaps not every investigator has because they may not have all the information from a different shooting that might be related, but might, with the collaboration, provide important information that can help turn a case that is not prosecutable into one that is. Since we've been meeting weekly, with our partners in January, we have been able to successfully prosecute over 50 cases that may not, or at least initiate prosecution of over 50 cases that may not have been prosecuted or able to be prosecuted previously. So again, this is our #1 priority. We are dedicated to this work. We will prosecute vigorously all serious firearms cases within Multnomah County, and we're encouraging the public to rally behind community members in police in support of these prosecutions and investigations. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Ospauger. I'm the acting United States Attorney for Oregon. As the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for the state, my job, #1, is to protect the community. And as mentioned by the other speakers, we have banded together to identify gun violence as the #1 priority for all of our offices. The way we're doing that is a collaborative approach, and we must work collaboratively for this program to work. With our other federal partners, who include the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, we are working on a number of projects along with the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office and the Portland Police Bureau. Those include the Safe Streets Task Force. The Safe Streets Task Force is being used to bring in the FBI, as you've heard, to work evening shifts on the street for intelligence and law enforcement purposes. The ATF will be used to use their analytic skills to identify weapons that are being used over and over and over again in multiple crimes. Find out where those weapons are coming from and seize those weapons and get them off the street. This is a regional approach, and it's a multi-jurisdictional approach that's going to require each of our offices to bring cases where we can. As Ms. Snowden has mentioned, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office has brought a number of cases, and so have we. We have opened over 20 investigations so far since January on gun crimes. Those include felon possession, illegal possession of firearms, as well as other gun-related charges. We also, in collaboration with our Multnomah County partners, are meeting weekly to discuss cases, and through that process have identified additional cases, and over 50 individuals have been charged out of this weekly case review that's being done. What we know is that these shootings are colorblind. We hear the stories of the shootings and retaliatory shootings that are taking place, but gun violence is a community-wide problem. And it's a problem that needs to be addressed by all of us. I applaud the March Against Murder coming up on Saturday and ask all of us, from faith communities, nonprofits, governments, and law enforcement, to work together to solve this problem so that our community can again be viewed as a safe place to raise our families and for visitors to come. Thank you very much.
That will wrap it up, folks. Pastor Hennessy was supposed to have some closing remarks, but he's downstairs right now at the moment taking care of some other business. So if you do want to talk to somebody, you can approach them and just do one-on-ones, but we didn't plan to do any Q&A from the podium here. So break off and